Welcome to Riverdale After Dark, a podcast about the CW's Riverdale that's singing and dancing and tippity-tapping for the very last time. I'm Alex.
When you walk through the darkness and you have a song in your heart, the best thing to do is write a song about your friends and then make them sing it to you. And it's like sort of, a personal, crossing a personal line, but that's what friendship is all about. I'm Justin.
Golly gee, I'm tired of the 50s. I'm Pete.
Oh, boy. I got some bad news for you in like 2 minutes then. We're going to be talking about Riverdale Season 7, Episode 14, Chapter 131, Archie The Musical. Now, brief bit of recap before we get into this. We are in the final season of Riverdale. This is the final musical episode of the show and the first ever original musical episode with completely original songs. We'll talk about that in a moment. Lots of stuff going on with the characters and their relationships. The specific things that you need to know is Kevin and Clay are dating. They need to keep it secret because it's in the 1950s. Cheryl and Tony are dating. They also need to keep it secret because in the 1950s. So there's been a lot of conversations between the four of them about how out they can be and how public they can be as they wrangle with the homophobia of the time period they're in. Also important to mention, if you've totally tuned out, nobody remembers what has happened in the first 6 seasons currently. Maybe that'll happen later on. We'll see. But right now, they're all teens in high school again. Also, you should probably know that Betty and Veronica struck up a bit of a flirtation a couple of episodes back. That was a bit of a swerve from the direction we seem to be heading in, Betty and Archie. At the same time, Archie and Veronica kissed, surprisingly, the last episode, and that's something that we're also dealing with again in this episode. Reggie plays basketball. Fangs and Midge are together, and Archie's main rival in this time period is Julian Blossom, not Jason Blossom, who they're on the basketball team together. Julian, of course, is Cheryl's brother, and they kind of look like each other, and that's something that we deal with in a big way in this episode.
Big time redhead on redhead action.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I don't know. That's actually kind of everything that you need to know going on here. They had a bout with communism in the last episode, but we seem to be well past that, though feel a little bit of the after effects. And I don't think this was established before. Maybe I'm forgetting, but there's clearly some stuff going on in the Keller family, and that's one of the big emotional threads that we're dealing with in this episode. So we are going to, Justin, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, this is a Kevin episode. Is this the first ever full-on Kevin episode of Riverdale?
Well, we had Hedwig, the Hedwig musical, I think in a similar way, sort of balanced Kevin with the rest of the cast, with Archie, had the focus on him. But this is definitely this feels like the big Kevin episode we have been asking for a very long period of time. Just before we get too far into it, do we want to do news and get angry, or do we want to talk about the episode and save news for the end? Pete's nodding, saying news. Pete wants to stay sane for the next hour or so before he absolutely blows a gasket. We'll see if it naturally comes up over the course of the conversation.
I bet it will, because it's definitely what's going on. Now, but the other thing, slightly controversial thing, and maybe we should save this for the end, I feel like we need to do a real snapshot of the ships right now, because it's a surprising place.
A ship shot? You want to do a ship shot now?
Ship shot?
Yeah, it's too early for that kind of stuff.
We save our ship shot for the end of the podcast. You know this, Justin.
All right. I'm just saying it's a big topic. So I guess you want to just talk about 1950s traffic in Riverdale or whatever?
Yeah, sure. Well,
Pete, what's a safe topic for you?
let's just go through the fucking musical, and break down the fucking episode.
Calm down with the language. Just calm down. We're going to talk about it. I want to talk about my broad feelings, and I'm curious to see if you guys had the same reaction, because watching this episode, I was a little trepidatious knowing, okay, it's going to be original songs. We'll see how this goes. They've done some great musical episodes. I've said before that I feel like the musical episodes to me are like the purest form of Riverdale, just everybody's bursting into song all the time.
Yeah.
This one, starting off the episode, legitimately my thought was, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like right at the top of the episode. At the top of the episode, I was like, this song is dumb. The lyrics are dumb. What is happening here? Dude. Suddenly they had a time jump. This is ridiculous. And over the course of the episode, as things slowly unfolded, I realized the plot they were going for, the emotional hook they were going for. I was bowled over by the whole thing, and by the end, I was legitimately like crying for the last couple of minutes of the episode. So I was very much won over by this. Sounds like you guys had a different experience. So Pete, you loved it for the first note. You were in it to win it. You're Archie the Musical all the way, right? Is that what I'm getting?
No. I had no idea walking in it was going to be a musical number, so I was like, "Fuck, here we go." But I wasn't like. Some of the musical ones over the years have been some really fun episodes. So I was like, all right, they're going to fucking sing, buckle up. And I thought overall as an episode, it was okay. But it's just, it's heartbreaking the fact that, we might have to spend the whole fucking last season in this time fucking dash for whatever fucking reason.
First of all, comment with the language. Second of all, remember when we said we were going to save news to the end and you asked? You're going right into news, buddy.
I'm not going into news. I don't know what the news is. I'm just telling you about how I felt about what was happening and what was going on.
Well, why don't we leave that fact aside? Because I think this episode has so much to talk about, just internal, that we don't need to even worry about what the calendar says in Riverdale. Because I actually thought this episode, I agree with you, Alex, was one of the smartest, more complex episodes that they've ever done, and not only like pushes the characters down the line in the directions they want to take them in, but also is like a meta commentary on Archie as a cultural thing, and then a meta commentary on Riverdale and what I think is sort of been the mission statement of the show is, taking these characters that are like avatars for being young in America, say, and like showing that it's way more complex than that. And to use the musical and sort of the bright, shiny, super simple songs and undercutting them throughout and developing them and showing these people to be nuanced, building toward Kevin, after confronting all of these changes he's had internally to him this season, to have an external thing like his parents getting divorced, I thought was just really everything firing on all cylinders is what I would say.
Yeah. On the base level of the plot, just to be more specific about the thing that I was really bowled over about, is you have these very dinky, pure musical numbers, very focused on Archie, which on the surface doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, yes, he is the all-American boy in the 1950s, but why is Kevin writing a musical about his friend Archie? That it slowly unfolds over the course of the episode that everything is powered by Kevin's panic over the fact that he may have caused his parents' divorce by breaking up with Betty and getting together with Clay is so powerfully and so beautifully done and so sneakily unfolded over the course of the episode. Yeah. Also through the idea of his parents they're not leaving him. Like his mother very specifically in that really beautiful scene towards the end says, "You are my son and I love you unconditionally." Basically like, I know what's going on with you.
That was
Clay.
Great. That was a nice
incredible. But that it's not about that and that's not what's going on, but that everybody else is leaving him over the course of the episode and he's just holding on tighter and tighter and tighter as he goes to everything. I thought that was great. And then ending in this musical number, and I know I'm jumping to the end here, but I do think it's like the arc of the episode, ending in this musical number where everybody gets together and is essentially doing the more realistic, maybe Rent-style version of the Friends Forever song that they sing at the beginning is so beautiful.
Friends Forever, of course, the Saved by the Bell, the band from Saved by the Bell.
Of course. I'm sorry. Wrong show. I said Rent, but I meant Saved by the Bell, which are very similar properties. The thing at the end, just like having this metatextual commentary of like they wrapped, a week and a half ago at this point, and I know this is not the final episode, but having that feeling of these people, these actors are saying goodbye to each other at the same time, just really got me at the end there.
See, interesting. That's a whole nother meta commentary that you're putting on top of this.
Yes,
being aware
I think
like,
that's
the larger
more
Riverdale.
me putting it on top, but just the idea of them all being together for each other, having everybody come into the music room at the end and be there for Kevin and building great stuff.
How did they know the lyrics to the song, Alex, do you think, when they walked in?
Psychic connections left over from season 6.
Ooh, wow, nice save.
Answer. Thank you.
I did feel like at the end of it, I was like, oh, this is a nice kind of like curtain call moment where everybody's on stage together singing and performing. So that part was very touching. I mean, I could have done without bringing What's-Her-Face back. I was like, "Ooh, do we really need to do this? Seems problematic." But I mean, they were really
Grundy from the last episode. Yeah, that's the last episode.
From last episode.
Sorry.
It's all right.
But I
it
feel
was
like
weird that Grundy came in the middle of Kevin's musical number and was like, "And Grundy."
Yeah, and remember
Grundy the
me.
Yeah. That's the director's cut. The director's
choice.
cut. We got to see that.
Yeah, but I felt like it was kind of nice to get them all together one last time for the kind of like big finish. So I did kind of feel that a little bit as far as like, oh, this is nice that they all get to be together during a musical thing because they don't normally. So I thought it was a kind of a cool moment for the actors. So yeah.
Well, and also just
I also think.
Oh, go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
I was going to say, I also think that like having Kevin having a episode about Archie the Musical and then have it actually be sort of Kevin taking center stage, sort of on the sly, like you said, Alec, like over the course of the episode, was another great gesture toward the theme of like, hey, I know Archie is the main thing we think here, but their characters are all much more complex than you think, even down to a character like Kevin that's always been shuttled off to the side, so much so that this episode can raise him to the front and make it actually Kevin the Musical is what this was.
Mm-hmm. Well, turning to the Archie thing to talk about that, and then we can get into some specific scenes and songs and things from the episode. The fact that they force Archie into a place where he has to make a choice, and some choices, mind you, are made for him, but I thought that was a very smart thing to do as well. I saw some fans sort of griping that like, oh boy, they're just sort of downplaying the whole relationship thing, but like, that's been the thing we've talked about for 7 seasons at this point, that Archie's like, I'm going to be a fireman, and I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to be an astronaut, and a policeman, and
a musician.
And they're making fun of it. They're
and then
calling
I'm going to be in a
themselves out a
fight
little
club,
bit.
and then I'm going to...
And you have that scene in Pop's Diner that I thought was so funny where he can't even decide between salad and super salad.
Yeah,
super salad.
Oh, man. Pop gets tooled in that scene. Bring it out. Wrap it up.
Pop's reaction
just
there
like,
when he's like, I got to take the grilled cheese over. He's like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Very funny.
You idiot. I've been serving people like you for generations.
Well, why don't we talk through this episode a little bit? So we do open up with this musical number where I was completely thrown for a loop. I legitimately believed that, oh my God, we had a time dash of a year to senior year. Betty has a ponytail. There's that very fun line where Jughead's like, 4 years feels like I've done it before, because of course he has. But all of this stuff, I thought this was such a great setup for the episode in retrospect, because all of those things you're watching where Veronica's talking about, like, this new girl's going to make some moves. And you're like, what's happening? She's been here for months at this point. So very good setup for that. And I thought that musical number was dinky, but it's supposed to be dinky.
I think that's what's so cool about it, is it's almost purposeful how it is very like bright, shiny, boilerplate American musical, down to the line. There's no lower art form than American musical comedy. Very funny. I do have a question though. Like, we see Jughead in his train car. Is Hot Dog his legal guardian?
Great question. This also partially gets into the news section. I don't want to get into that too much, but I don't know. Yes, yes,
because I think we don't have an example of why he's like allowed to live alone in a train. Like Ethel is like, you need a guardian at all times. You need to be watched by nuns or Alice. And Jughead's like, I live here with my dog in a train.
Are there any laws that say a dog can't be your legal guardian?
That's what I'm talking about. Heir parent bud.
Parent bud. Dad
and
bud.
Is there a bathroom in the train? These are just the questions, you know?
This is great. I'm sure they'll get into it next episode.
Yeah.
I liked the ridiculous line sandwich in the middle of the song where Jughead just sees a sandwich and sings about a sandwich. Great. That was good. And I like Kevin and Clay working together on the musical. You know, we've talked about this a little bit, but Clay, I think, is such a great addition to the show. I love him with Kevin. I love his presence. Yeah. He's so good.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that their relationship
still great.
Wait, what'd you say?
But the Claven relationship.
I was just going to say a little underused, but really great.
Yeah, we don't really necessarily get an emotional arc necessarily for Clay this episode, but I just think like
or ever.
But he fits into the cast really nicely. If there was more time and more seasons, I think we'd see more of him potentially. What were you going to say, Justin?
Good.
I was going to say the Claven relationship is really nice, and I like that they haven't, once they sort of got together, there hasn't been a lot of internal drama to them. They just seem like genuinely happy and in love. And I think that's something that we've talked about in all the other seasons. Like, why is Kevin so bad at just like feeling love and being able to be in that? He always seems to like sort of go the other way. And it's just nice that they've let that be just a really nice relationship.
Mm-hmm. Then we get Jughead and Reggie basically immediately leave after the musical number. They're like, we don't want anything to do with this. Thank you so much. And then we get a second song right off. I couldn't believe that we were jumping right into musical numbers. This is like full on musical episode. And we get that Julian Archie song where they're singing what's supposed to be the same part, but it's not really because it's a duet. What'd you guys think about that one?
It is a weird way to run a rehearsal to have the understudy and the main actors sing the song at the same time. Very difficult.
Time though. It's a great way to kind of,
Yeah. Well, what I thought was funny about
we should
that
all
is
talk about our podcast takes at the same time so we could save time.
We kind of already do that. Yeah.
We just did, like 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
I really like this because that was, once again, like a thought that was happening the entire time. Clearly, they wrote this as a duet. It works as a duet with Julian just copying everything that Archie is doing. I liked calling that out. This question we have of like, what is Julian doing here? He's basically like Archie with a little more classic Reggie. What is happening? And to point that out very specifically in this episode that I thought was fun. And then also point out the fact that like this doesn't work as a duet and this doesn't make any sense immediately afterwards was also fun. I thought it was a good musical number.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. It's nice to see Julian and Archie just like at each other in like fun, like boy way, like when they're running and just like pushing each other off. It was good.
Well, just to ask a question about Julian, though, he has been this really awful antagonist for Archie and pretty much everybody else all season. Do you think he got knocked down a peg enough by Hiram the last episode that he's able to be in this place where he's more like part of the gang this episode? Or
just
is
taking off his shirt and singing with everybody, acting like he hasn't been a total asshole the whole season?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's the nice thing about musicals, right? If you just start singing, then it's, hey, everything is okay.
Yeah, it's all
that works. That works anytime I'm in a compromising situation. Just sing, officer.
And as far as I know, I mean, I haven't done theater in a while, but there's no drama in the musical theater scene, right? Like
everyone just gets along. Very little competition.
Yeah, everybody's like, sounds good. Let's do another musical. Yay.
We're just a chorus line.
Don't throw shade at musical theater geeks. Come on, man.
Oh, okay.
It's the lowest art form. American musical comedy.
And we touched on this earlier, but then we get the great line where they're pushing Archie about his I Want song, and he doesn't know what he wants. And I think it's Kevin points out that, like, if you don't know what you want, not to mention you're a poorly defined main character if you want too many things.
I love it.
Very fun.
Self roast. Real quick though, before we move off Julian, I would just want to say, like, I think the reason why he's part of the gang is, and maybe I'm pushing this idea too much, but like, I think he's with the kids. You know, he's like, as we're setting up this culture, like the adults versus the kids, and it feels like it's more and more that. Like, I think he's at least in the middle. So, like, I think that's why he's been sort of less of a villain now.
I think they just needed him to do a musical number this episode, to be honest, because he's a Broadway guy. So in real life,
always has been. He is really.
Yeah. He's been in. I think it was a musical, but as far as I have heard, Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa saw him in a show, and while watching him in a show, was like, "Hey, what if we had him be Julian Blossom? That would be interesting." So
that's fun.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I think Hiram knocking him down was sort of being like, "Hey, I'm a villain. You're a kid." Like, there's a difference here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I would love for that to be part of the development of Julian, but only because I've watched several seasons of Riverdale, I believe we'll be back to being an asshole next episode, probably.
You could be an asshole and not be a villain, right?
But you can't be an asshole and sing.
Justin, who are you asking for right now?
Myself.
Oh, no.
We did touch a little bit on the meta stuff. It is getting a little bit like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, every once in a while, but I think it's getting a little heavy-handed at points, especially when they're like, oh, this really feels like a 1950s just commentary. I really love this for you.
I don't know. The two lines that I laughed out loud at were, I think it was Tony saying, "Wowza, you completely captured the feeling of being in a queer interracial relationship in the 1950s."
Yep. 50s, yeah.
That made me laugh out loud. And the other one, when I think the line was the being like, "What kind of word is frenemies?" The cut to Kevin where he's like, "I invented it." Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I understand.
I agree. That made me laugh.
I understand what you're saying, Pete. Like, I agree with you. There's a point when it becomes how much does it become like you're removed from the material that you're actually watching? But I can't hate it too much because
they're hitting it hard though, and they keep going to it. And I'm wondering it's either get to a place where they do it so much it becomes funny again for me. But right now I'm just like, fuck you. You've got me stuck in the fucking 50s, and you keep hitting this thing.
Okay. All right. We're saving that for the end. We're saving the curse time for the end.
I'm glad we moved news to the end, first off.
But actually, it's called cursing time. Cursing time happens after ship shots.
Yep. Wow, great. Are we speaking in 1950s language now? Get your ship shots before cursing time.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys are getting me all dipsy doodle this episode.
You're just a khaki wacky girl.
We were talking about Hiram. It's nice to have Hiram back.
That was last episode again.
Last episode, but
he's in this one, isn't he?
No.
Damn it. You guys mentioned him, and I was like,
you're blurring.
It's great to be back with him.
Yeah, but the floating babies were back.
Yeah, they're floating over the whole episode. I want to say, like, Pete, I feel like your frustration with this season grows. Is there a Riverdale episode or even moment that you can think of, and maybe you don't even have to answer right now, that is like your peak Riverdale, where you're like, that's the one, or that's the time?
You're talking about over the course of all 7 seasons.
Over the series, yeah.
Unfortunately, we got to go back. For me, peak Riverdale is Bughead fighting crime, working together, accepting each other and their darkness. And
but that was a longer story. I know that, but I'm curious how you see the show and how it like sort of has an arc to it. Feels like I'm curious where your peak point was. If it was like when they were unraveling the Gargoyle King, or
I already answered the question. I'm sorry it wasn't acceptable for you, but that
I'm just asking. I'm asking you to be more specific because that's the interesting part. If someone punched me in the face on the street, and said, "What's Pete's favorite part of Riverdale?" I'd say Bughead, and they'd be like, "Yes." Yeah. But we all know that,
right?
I was just curious, Alex. Do you have like a peak moment in time?
Peak moment in time. You're saying like when the show is at the height of its powers?
I've been doing podcasts long enough with you, Justin, to know what is yours, because you usually tee us up when you have a good answer. So why don't you?
I'm not trying to tee. I mean, you could probably guess my answer. A, B. I was curious I was more about you, Pete, because I see you liking it less, and so I'm curious what the peak was. But Alex, you already answered yours in a vague way. Alex, what was yours?
I mean, again, this is I guess kind of vague, but for me, I think the show was probably just peak during season 2, and then like we talked about the last episode, I really sort of fondly, in a weird way, look back at season 3 for the insanity. That said, I am really enjoying this season. I like this season a lot. It might be my favorite season of the show since season 1, but we'll have to see how it turns out. I think a lot of that depends on the last couple of episodes and how it sort of rounds out as a story.
Justin always loves the latest.
My answer is this season, this episode. This show is peaking right now. It's peaking right now.
Of course. That doesn't make sense, Justin. You know that, right?
Why doesn't that make sense?
This.
When you're climbing a mountain, you keep going up until you get to the top.
Yeah, but you can't say that this is peak because they went back in time.
Pete, just to help you out here a little bit, you also know, Justin, we'll just pretend you're not here for a second. You know Justin has recency bias, right? He always loves the last thing.
Always. But saying that your favorite part is a thing that the show started in present day, and then we went back to the 50s, and you're going, I like the flashback. That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing, because that's what I'm getting at with asking you about your favorite parts of the series, because... And I know we're not talking about this episode, but I think in this final season, you got to get self-reflective a little bit. I think that because I'm not about what the calendar is and what the time is, and this isn't a flashback. This is the natural narrative progression of Riverdale. I think the characters are at their most complex and peak development-wise right now because the creative team has had the most time with all of it, and I think they, unlike some shows that do fall off a little bit, I think this show has just gotten better and expanded their toolbox as the series has gone on.
Hard disagree, my friend.
Well, why don't we get back to the episode in particular that we're talking about? So immediately after this, we get the first out of musical number where Kevin and Clay sing to each other about being in love. I thought this was great. I love the dancing with the lights on the Riverdale High steps. I thought that was so lovely. And this is not to blow up a little bit of the news portion. This is not one of the things that I want to talk about, but Casey Cott is headed to Broadway. He's going to play Christian, I believe is the name of the character, in Moulin Rouge. And I almost felt like this right here was his audition tape. Obviously he has several seasons of it, but watching this, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to crush that. He's going to do a great job.
That's awesome. Honestly, I thought this whole episode was a backdoor audition for a Archie Broadway show.
Mm-hmm. Well, so just to mention something about that, I think it was a play and not a musical, but it does kind of bring things full circle in terms of the way that Riverdale ostensibly started was Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa did a show that was a parody of the Archie comics characters where Archie was gay and everybody else was gay. He did it at this underground theater. Archie Comics shut it down. They eventually brought it back and changed the names and a little bit of the circumstances so legally they could do it. But that's what pretty much directly led to most of Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa's career. It certainly led to him eventually becoming chief creative officer over, I think that was the title, over at Archie. It led to Riverdale. So to go from this underground show that essentially sparked the idea that would become Riverdale to eventually doing the Archie the Musical is, I think, a nice way of bringing it around towards the end here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that story. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Pete, the level you're barely caring about any of this right now is breaking my heart. But why don't we get to something that you probably absolutely hated after we get this beautiful number with Kevin and Clay? Then we get Cheryl, Tony, Betty, and Veronica singing about wanting Archie with The Boy Is Mine style song. I thought this number was horrifying in terms of putting Cheryl and Tony in this perspective, but also a great number divorced from that. Pete, what did you think?
Well, what made me kind of regain consciousness after an anger rage, I think it's one of those things where the fact that they were like, hey, why did you just tack us on there? And then Kevin being like, well, you guys complained, so I just kind of threw you in this number, which was a very kind of meta thing in itself. But I thought at least I was like, okay, well, that makes more sense because otherwise it's like completely against who they've been this whole time. So I thought the explanation was meta and I guess a little cute, but again, they're fucking hitting that really hard.
Which really hard?
Meta, he's saying.
Oh, meta. Oh, man. Like, you're so bummed out right now. Justin, what did you think about this one?
I really liked it. As soon as it was going and we had Cheryl and Tony being like, I love Archie too. I was like, this is about to be undercut so hard. and I also think it was interesting that the scene with Cheryl and Archie, and it's like, I pulled out my pom-poms, Archie was mine. That was set to be just like the moment when they had their kiss from earlier this season in the episode when and I thought that was a smart way to sort of remind us, like, Cheryl had to do this in real life, not just in this musical number. So that was really cool. And I like where it gets when they come out, they have their roasts of the song. And then like we'll write the song and they task Kevin and Clay with writing something honest and gets us a great moment later on in the episode.
I will say one thing as a Shoney shipper here that made me a little mad watching this musical number is Shoney fans have been waiting 6 seasons at this point to see Tony and Cheryl on a bike together riding, and that we finally got Tony riding on a bike with somebody, but it was Archie. Very annoying. Very annoying.
Wait, sorry, Shoney fans have been waiting 6 seasons for them on a bike?
Yes. Sweet little motorcycle rides. Hashtag sweet little motorcycle rides.
I guess I haven't been up on that hashtag.
Yeah, Justin, I mean, when people get together, then you got to have them on different moving vehicles to show their love. I mean, what do you
haven't you saw when Elon Musk tweeted out this thing, he's like, hey, we're limiting the rate here on Twitter of posts you can read unless it's hashtag sweet little motorcycle rides, then you can read as much as you want.
I'm sorry.
That makes sense.
I lost consciousness. Are we talking about Elon Musk right now?
Always.
Yeah.
The subtext of our podcast is we're always talking about Elon Musk.
Well, then I quit.
And we end each episode by giving out Blue Sky invites to all of our greatest fans, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yes, we don't need to spend time on this. I just wanted to say that out loud because it was a thought in my head, and that's
you wanted to plug Elon real quick, give him some what's up.
Not that. The hashtag sweet little motorcycle rides. Hashtag
is that a real hashtag?
No, but it is now.
It is on Blue
trending
Sky
right now.
Alex, let me ask you, are there other things that, quote unquote, Shoney fans have been waiting 6 seasons for besides sweet little motorcycle rides? Could you give us a list?
If I could think of what Shoney fans would want, Rain Kiss would be good. Snow Kiss would be good. Hashtag Shoney Wedding. That would be nice. Hashtag Shoney Babies. Hashtag Shoney the Next Generation. All of these things.
Is that like Muppet Babies, but with Cheryl and Tony?
With Shoney babies.
Right, where they're both nanny's legs and also the babies themselves somehow. I don't know how that works. We haven't worked out they haven't worked out that part, but
good. Wow.
Good save
little slip up
nice
there.
Whoops.
There. Yeah.
Well, it's happening. Let's get that spin-off trending, folks, and I'm sure it'll happen. The new CW is super into that type of stuff. Why don't we move on, though? Because Cheryl challenges them to write something true, which I really like that bit a bit. But then we get Archie getting a new song where he has to decide between Betty and Veronica. The songs got steadily better for me over the course of the episode, just in terms of structure of songs. I really like this one. I like the way that it was filmed, like having him sit at a movie theater and watch a movie of Betty and Veronica, particularly now that we know that the characters are not on board with these songs that Kevin are writing. I felt much better about the material that they're singing about. I also love the shot of Veronica absolutely just jamming onion rings into Archie's mouth. That was very funny. What do you guys think about this one? Pete's just giving thumbs up.
Just a thumbs up?
Pete is de-peated. You've been de-peated. Hashtag de-peated. Hashtag.
I mean, they sang throughout the whole up. You know what I mean? It's just more singing.
Oh my
God.
Wow. But
that's the last thing
I guess
Pete says. No, I have stuff to say.
Yeah,
I mean,
please.
we've talked a lot about the comic book series where it was like a dream situation where Archie marries Veronica and in turn marries Betty, and he sort of saw both of those lives. I feel like this is like we talked about that maybe being part of the story this season back before it started. And I like that they, I think, gestured to it here when he's watching the two sides of it on the movie screen. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. And also the interesting perspective about this, I think, is that it's not necessarily Archie thinking this. It's Kevin thinking Archie is thinking this, and that's how he's writing the song. Though, obviously, it does tie into Archie a little bit because it forces him to step away from the musical in terms of actually trying to make a decision. We can probably talk about the Betty Veronica stuff a little bit rather than just like trucking through this, because right after this, Betty and Veronica have a conversation where Veronica confesses that she kisses Archie, and Betty and Veronica decide to focus on their friendship. Then later in the episode, after singing a song to each other, written by none other than Cole Porter, and it definitely sounds like a Cole Porter song.
Huge Cole Porter influence.
Yeah, it was a fun plug in the middle of this episode for Cole Porter. You know?
That's great. That's going to be huge for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, have you guys heard of Cole Porter? No? Well, man.
The way Veronica says Cole Porter, it's like she doesn't know him. The name dropping is very like Cole Porter.
Also, I got to say, I did really like that song. I thought that was one of the better songs of the episode. That is not a Cole Porter song. That is a Disney song, maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't say that derisively. I like Disney songs, but they do so the song and like they feel something primal between each other and decide to maybe try being with each other. What do we think about the development of the Veronica relationship over both Barchi and Varchi? I know this is probably for ship shots, but we can do it right now.
This is definitely what prompted Ship Shots as a new branded segment for the podcast in its final season. But I do think like the way that the show is sort of moving toward them, I think it's surprising. I think it feels real. Like this episode made it real, I think, beyond anything. So I'm curious where just now I think anything's on the table. That we've truly sort of broken all the predisposed ideas of the ship shots.
Pete?
Hey, did you guys know Cole Porter wrote songs for both film and television musicals?
Yes, I did.
Nice.
I'm sorry, not television, stage and film musicals.
Yeah.
But I also like moving back to what we're
looking up to check to see if he was dead. Was that what you were looking up? Pete?
No, if the show was going so hard, I figured I'd do some Googling and look into the Cole Porter situation.
Well, I'm glad you really dug deep and found that fact.
Cole Porter situation.
Yeah.
I also think like the radical honesty that Betty and Veronica have, like none of the other characters have that. And I think that's what gets in a way a lot of their relationships, like all the like Barchi stuff, Reggie and Veronica, all that. Like it feels like they just aren't being direct with each other. And Betty and Veronica are very comfortable being direct with each other. And I think that's important.
One of the nice things about this season is we are getting more B&V time. You know what I mean? So that's been nice. The two of them together are great together. So it's always nice when they get some time to kind of talk or make out or whatever. Yes. But they're two great actresses, and when they're together in a scene, it's nice.
Yeah, clearly Lily Reinhardt and Camila Mendes have chemistry with each other, and I think that's what they're playing off of. Like we've talked about, this is their last chance to do all of that stuff on this show, so why not try every iteration of things? I'm still kind of dubious that Veronica is endgame, even though we are getting very close to the end here, but I don't know. Like you said, they basically like what is it, like flip the card table, I guess is the expression at this point.
Yeah.
So whatever seemed clear going into episode 10 seems much less clear here on episode 14.
I also think it explains a little bit more the Varchi kiss, which we speculated, what does this mean? And now I think from a like writing point of view, it was to get us to this scene and this relationship. Like, I don't know. It feels like Varchi is less of a thing and more of just like what prompted them to connect.
Yeah, we'll see. Wild times at the old Riverdale. After this, we get a scene of Tom is sleeping at the police station, which ties into the whole divorce storyline. I think this is the first time we've seen Kevin's mom in 7 seasons, so that was pretty surprising. Yep. But I liked her. She was good. Good character.
Yeah.
It was great. It was absolutely... I didn't believe it for a 1950s mom, but it was very sweet and touching and what you wanted the mom to say for sure.
Yeah. It seemed like there was a moment in that scene where Clay is staying over at Kevin's and he sneaks out the window where she comes in and is like, we're going to have dinner, all 3 of us, where I thought maybe she was inviting Clay because she knows what's happening, but then it's not. It's about her dad and they're getting a divorce. Oops. We get, after that, a great quartet. I think this was probably my second favorite number in the episode, but between Kevin, Clay, Tony, and Cheryl, where they sing about their love for each other. They have a great duo of lines where Kevin, I think it's Kevin or Clay, says, I'd fight a man for you. And then Tony says, I'd fight a girl for you, which I thought was very cute. But I really love this number. And the ending of it was very sad that Kevin was like, no, we're never going to perform this for anybody. But I was glad Tony and Cheryl stood up for themselves against Kevin and Clay in that moment.
Yeah, I really thought they were going to turn and look at the camera like, we're not going to perform this for anyone.
Wink.
Wink. Justin?
I also enjoyed it a lot. I love that it was a love song into a sex song. Like they're just like straight up getting it right at the end.
Yeah, there you go.
Like all love songs.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Prove to me, name one love song that doesn't immediately become a sex song. You can't, because they don't.
Can't do it.
Then we get the super salad scene, which we talked about, which is very fun. There was one thing that I wanted to ask about that. There's an interesting shot that they choose. There's just like a Jughead camera reveal where it spins around Pops and it's like, surprise, Jughead was there with Archie the whole time. It sort of felt to me, I don't think this is what they were going for, but it sort of felt to me a very similar shot when they've had the angel Gabriel sitting at Pop's counter giving advice to people. Did you get that sense at all?
I didn't get that sense. Are you saying Jughead's an angel?
Yeah.
Jughead is a beautiful angel brought to earth, 100%, yes.
Wow. I thought it was interesting because it was like, who's Archie talking to? Jughead? They're barely friends.
They should talk more. They like high-fived in the opening number. I want to see more Jughead Archie before we wrap up the show. So yeah, it was nice to see them together. Then we get the Betty and Veronica number, which we talked about, which I thought was great. They talk about it in the common room. Archie, there's that.
But before that, we get Archie talking to Frank, saying he's out on basketball.
Let's not step over Justin's check-in with Uncle Frank at what stage of turning into a monster he is, or a Ken doll.
He's not turning into a monster. He's turning into a Ken doll as a tie into the Barbie movie. But
who's also masquerading as a monster.
I also thought that Frank is turning into the guy in the movie Office Space who's like, hey.
Wait.
You know who I mean?
Which guy, dude?
Yeah, which guy?
The guy who's the neighbor of the main character.
Guy?
Yeah. The actor who was on the Drew Carey show and then later Pamela Adlon's show.
Is that Diedrich Bader or?
Yeah, Diedrich Bader, yep.
Okay.
Frank's turning and he's like, hey, man. You got to do basketball. We love it. Poetry? What is that? Like all those words? Nah, man. We need you.
I'm also interested where this storyline is going to go. Like, how does that pan out with Archie becoming a poet? Like, is that where we're stuck with now for the rest of the series? Are we going to end with Archie publishing his book of poetry, going on tour? I don't know.
First off, how dare you say stuck with, okay? Archie has been many things to many people, but, poetry Archie could be his final form.
I mean, it certainly seems like it, I guess.
I feel like it could easily go back into singer-songwriter Archie. Mm-hmm. What is poetry but songs that don't have music yet?
Oh, good point.
Wow.
I used to play in a band that did Emily Dickinson songs.
It was a death metal, right?
Yeah, it was a death metal Emily Dickinson band called.
I just want
something.
Yeah, it's called We're the Snake. We're the Snake.
I'd like to not hate Uncle Frank. So if he could just stop being a douchebag, that would be great. If we could find some kind of better use for Uncle Frank than coming in and just saying horrible things, that'd be cool.
We'll see. He's like Justin's been talking about. The parents are not great here, except for Tom, who seems okay this episode, other than getting a divorce. But you know,
and
he seems very tired.
Kevin's mom also is great.
Kevin's mom, yeah. Maybe that was what was throwing me a little bit, was parents being nice a little bit in this episode. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a one-off. Then we get the fun scene of Archie telling Betty and Veronica that he's not going to kiss anyone, or at least try to for a while, with them barely caring. Very funny.
I love that. I love fond. He's like, I'm fond of you. And they both, fond? That was funny. Later Gators.
Yeah. We get the Kevin parents are getting a divorce scene, which very sad in pops, but very beautifully lit. And then we get the musical performance for Featherhead, which is absolutely wild because Julian is Archie, Clay is Jughead, Fags is Reggie, and then everybody else is playing themselves.
It's great.
Super fun.
Hilarious.
Super ridiculous number. Really good. And then we also get the meta line, which you probably hated, Pete, that original musicals are tough sells.
Yep.
Yeah.
Truth.
Because Pete, we should have mentioned this up top. You're a musical producer, right? You produced Into the Woods in the original production on Broadway. And you were like, no, the second act. I know it's dark, but it has to stay. It's important.
Yeah.
It's important for Sondheim.
Children listen. That's what you said.
Mm-hmm. And then we get the end of the episode. We've talked already about this a bunch with this number. Archie comes in, tells Kevin about his choice to ask him to play the song. Everybody sings and cries, and I cried, and that's the end of the episode. Before we move on to our news section, or I guess ship shots, that we've kind of already done that. Any other notes from the episode you want to call out? Any other scenes?
There was an important scene during the Betty and Veronica song when they're running for their co-presidency, where Dilton runs up to get an autograph with his big old hog. Remember that scene?
Well, he doesn't run up to get an autograph with his big old hog. He runs up to get an autograph and has a big old hog.
That's right. That's what I mean.
Yeah, to be clear.
It's very funny that now that they've said that, when Dilton shows up, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's that guy with a big dick.
Well, every episode from now on.
I did also like the Clay kiss at that last number thing. That I thought that was a little sweet, little nice thing.
And the B&V handhold, telling you.
Yeah, in front of everybody.
Hands.
They're out now, I guess. Going to be really interesting to see how all of that pans out. Why don't we move into the news so we can get to the screamy, cursey
Well, I just want to say it was
please.
just to reiterate what you said, it was a very sweet ending and kind of a nice kind of like, like all these people love to sing and dance and they got to do it together here one last time. So as someone who's been through a lot with these people, it was nice to see them kind of together having fun like that.
Yeah, and overall kudos to the show for trying to do an original musical. I think that is... doing a musical episode in general is hard, and this is an extra level of difficulty, and I think they did it. So, hooray.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, let's get into
this episode.
Yes.
This is the best episode of the series.
Let's get into the news section. I'm trying to think where I should start with. Let me start with the slightly maddening thing, but at the same time, maybe not as maddening for certain people on this podcast.
Are we going to... The ships before news, right? Or
ships before news?
Yeah. We covered the ships. We covered the ships.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say about ships, Pete? Okay, it's time for Ship Shots, where we take a shot of ships and we take a shot at guessing what the ships are going to do. Pete, ship shot away.
I just say, it's been lovely as a Shoney shipper to see them. And, Clay and Kev is also very heartwarming. So if, Bughead has to die so they can rise and, if I lose that ship, I don't know, man. As we're getting closer, it's not looking good, but I'm not giving up hope. But it is really nice to see Clay and Kevin and Shoney together. So that's what I'm holding on to as we unwind here, and the show kicks me more and more in the nuts as it ends.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's two more nut kicks for you then, Pete. The first nut kick is, well, they're tied together. I interviewed Machen Amick about the last episode, which he directed, and asked her a bunch of questions about the episode and putting it together. And I recommend nothing to do with me. Like, go read it because she had some really interesting things to say in terms of how she constructed the episode, the previous one, and directed certain scenes. But the things that people, and I certainly reacted to, the first thing that I asked her was about it didn't seem like Skeet Ulrich was on set at any point. Is Phallus done, or is there still hope there? And she said, no, Skeet Ulrich is not coming back to the show. There is not.
So why would you do that? Why would you?
I need
now.
There's
No
I do my job as a journalist and ask
there's
questions.
No hope now.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. Just because
hold on, wait.
Ulrich...
Can I just mention something? So she said specifically there is going to be no Phallus endgame. She said that they were trying to do an episode around him. I assume similar to how they did an episode around Mark Consuelos, meaning like it would have been 42 minutes, but he would have been like, and FP comes back in the episode, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. And she said that Alice does end up with somebody else at the end.
Interesting.
I know what you were about to say,
different.
Justin. That's why I wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, you headed me off at the pass. I was going to say, you can shoot F Palace happening without showing Skeet.
No,
You can just get on the back of a motorcycle.
Yeah. All we need is a motorcycle.
No, we already got robbed of sweet little motorcycle rides. Is that what it was? For sure.
So this is my problem. Like, I was going to go watching the show holding hope for F Palace, and then you and your stupid journalism comes in and fucking destroys all my dreams.
Stupid journalism. Oh, well, you're not going to like the second half of news, I'll tell you that much.
Like, what?
But let me
Why
also
would you do
say
that, man? Give us some
because
hope.
it gives you you can have hope for something else. And how about this? What about Tom Keller, recently single?
Maybe. Could be Tom Keller. Could be Frank. Could be. I guess there were some pictures of some random old guy on set. Could be random old guy. I guess. I will say, from my perspective, I was very sad when I heard that from her. I would personally rather know that in advance rather than watch the finale being like, when's he going to show up? Is he going to show up? When's he going to show up? What's going to happen? Like, I'd rather be sad now than getting my hope up for 42 minutes because legit, the only two end games I actually care about on any level about the show are Phallus and Shodi. We're not getting Phallus. As long as we get Shodi, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, but you just destroyed somebody's fucking hopes and dreams, and now we're going to blame you instead of the show.
That's
you know
fine.
what I mean? Like, it's your fucking fault.
I'll be your Dark Knight,
we?
Pete. I'll be your Dark Knight because I can take it.
Damn it.
I mean, I guess that's just different personal preference on how you like to take in
Yeah,
content.
I don't like to know shit when I'm going into the last.
I do think, and I understand what you're saying. This is not to be like, no, Pete, think this way instead. But I do think there's a difference between knowing shit in advance, like spoilers, and knowing things that are non-spoilers in terms of it's not going to happen. Like, this is not a thing that's going to exist. But I understand that's not how you feel. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, and I'm also not disagreeing with your feelings. But for me personally, like, when I see like a door like that close, it just gives more direction to like, oh, what's the next possible? If she's going to be with someone at the end, who's on the table? Like, let's give us more.
Yeah, but now that you
speculate.
know this piece of information, it doesn't help you going into the episode being this kind of wide-eyed, like, ooh, there's all possibilities. You know this is fucking taken away from you, and whatever bullshit Alex is going to say next. So it's like, you know, now I have to live with this information as instead of going in being like, I got hopes, maybe it's going to happen, maybe it's not. Now it's like, well, Alex ruined
Pete,
this part for me. Now I got to watch it. And
what if Machen Amick was lying to Alex? Have you thought about that?
It's possible.
Well, let's hope so.
I don't think so, but
Does that give you hope?
I don't know, man. I don't know anymore.
yeah.
Well, this
she wasn't lying,
dark
but
ride.
maybe she's lying, so think about that. Well, here we go. I'm about to break your heart, Pete. The second thing, which I will say I cannot legitimately believe that she told me, but they are...
agreed.
Yeah. And I gave her, I was like, I know you probably don't want to get into spoilers about this, but...
What are you
I
about
asked her,
to do right now?
I asked her if they were leaving the
I don't know,
1950s.
Pete. I honestly don't know if you should listen to this, Pete.
Yeah, Pete, you might want to take off your headphones. I asked if they were going to leave the 1950s, and she said no.
Fuck you. The whole thing, the whole ride is going to be 50s.
So she did say something that was non-specific, where she was like,
"This sucks now."
They will explore. They will explore dimensions. Was the word she used? So it seems to me like we might see other aspects of the characters in other ways towards the end. Maybe they zoom forward in time. She was obviously very non-specific about that because she was not going to lay out the whole ending. But there you go.
So now what you said isn't true.
Well, here's the reason I asked this specifically is because, mind you, they're not doing like a 24-hour live feed of the set, but right up until the end, everybody was in their 1950s costumes. So I did feel
they could
obligated.
have shot something before all that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Before we put on 50s, because like from a designer aspect, like let's do all this first and then.
Well, entirely possible. And I will say in
they
both
could have
directions.
Something in the can.
Yes, in both directions. It is very hard to take all of their 1950 sets and change them over to like modern sets or whatever they want to do. We've talked to Denise Nadreje, who's in charge of that lot of stuff. And I think she was the one who told us that like they changed over the entire set from high school to the 7-year time jump in basically one weekend. So they have the capacity to do that. But the thing that was kind of raising my alarm bells here was that for them to turn it into a modern set and then back to the 1950 set for the very last day of shooting seems like a unnecessary expense and time suck, which I couldn't believe they would do. So that's why I was curious about it. You wouldn't do that. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think, and Pete, you tell me because you have very specific desires here. If they get their consciences back, will that be enough for you? If they are aware of their lives, even if their physical bodies never leave the 50s, if they are aware of everything that you're aware of.
But that's kind of shitty. I don't want them to be stuck in the 50s.
Well, let me throw out a scenario to you. The scenario, and I think we talked about this on the last episode, or maybe 2 episodes back, but the scenario is like they are stuck in the 1950s the entire time. They get their memories back, and they make the choice, the active choice to stay there. Like they're given that choice by Angel Tabitha. She's like, okay, I can return you to the regular Riverdale timeline. It's going to be post-Comet thing, so the town's going to be destroyed, and like a bunch of people are dead. Baby Anthony is very large in this timeline. Do you want to go back there, or do you want to stay in the 1950s where all these possibilities are open to you? Obviously, like the real world concern is you're staying in a place where the homophobia and racism is a little more overt than it is in the modern times.
A little bit more.
I'm being glib here, but like a lot of it more overt. But at the same time, like we've been talking about over the course of the season, these are characters that are more emotionally realized at this point, that understand themselves more and are more mature and moving to a more mature place. So I could see a possibility where they're presented with that choice and they realize, no, wait, our lives are more open to happiness now than they were in that previous timeline. Let's stay here. Let's continue this path and see what happens.
And I would say
you seem dubious, but go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
I would say that's the whole point of the show. I mean, the beginning of the show is like Riverdale's the town with pep. Underneath it is all this darkness. If the whole point of this season is that they go back in time and undo the darkness and create this utopia for like this generation where they can all be happy, they can be themselves, they break free of the conservative world over top of them. I think that pays off the sort of essential promise and the original sin of the first season.
And if you're talking about
you assholes have said enough for a little bit. So
I just wanted to make a joke about Kid Nation. That's all. Go ahead.
Kid Nation, yeah.
So as I recall, the original premise of the first season was Riverdale. You think it's this thing, but there's murder here. This isn't the thing that you think from the 1950s comic. This is an updated telling of a town that is completely insane with murders and all sorts of madness. That's what the premise was, not whatever the fuck you guys are saying.
That's what we're saying, but
it is.
We're saying if they can go back, they're back in time. If they can fix the town and say like it doesn't have to be this way, it doesn't have to be darkness and murder. Humans can just be themselves and be happy. That's a nice message. You just have to
go back to the 50s and relive it all to make sure that the comet thing doesn't happen. Is what you're saying?
But that's not the point. The point is that like we have the capacity to make the world and our lives better if we just take the time to really communicate with each other, be ourselves, accept each other. Then we can make our own perfect Riverdale in whatever town.
Well, but not even perfect, I would argue. Like, all they're asking is, like Tabitha set up in the very first episode of the season, they're just trying to get to a place where an evil sorcerer it cannot take over Riverdale and bring a comet down to destroy the town. So, on a more reasonable show level, I think what you're saying here, Justin, is if they could open up the possibility so it's not Riverdale, the town where all the murders happened in the United States, if they could get to a place where it's like, yeah, some bad stuff happens in our lives and there are things that really suck, but there are also good things as well. And we could accept those in equal measure, just like life is. Life is a balance of the good things and the bad things. That's what I think we're heading towards here, is them heading towards reasonable, wholesome, happy lives that are not utopian, but more realistic, less over the top, overarch, the way that we've watched in the first 6 seasons. But we don't know. Like, Pete, we're making arguments here based on not having seen the last 6 episodes of the season. So who knows?
We're making arguments because you did a fucking interview and now we got to deal with the fallout of that fucking bullshit.
Sorry.
It's not fallout.
I will, you know what? Sucker. At my journalism job, I'll stop asking
kid, before
questions.
you go in there and see that movie you're about to go see, let me just tell you what the fucking ending is. Okay, good luck, have fun.
No, it's what the ending isn't.
Again, I don't like spoilers, and I don't like putting spoilers out there.
What are you doing, asshole?
This is something that people were speculating about anyway and concerned about because we had publicly seen pictures. So my responsibility as a journalist is to ask about those things and find out about them.
It's stuff that we've talked about also. And I think, honestly, we all speculated that it was going to be in the 50s up until the last episode. So, this is only very slightly different to me.
We'll see. Again, I think we're... Three different perspectives here, where Pete is already mad. Justin's in it to win it because the last episode is always the best episode. And I think for me, as long as it's a emotionally satisfying episode, it doesn't matter quite as much to me whether in the 1950s or not.
Being stuck in the 50s is not a cool choice. I mean, sure, the prices of things are more reasonable, but that's it.
Oh, the eggs, the milk, Pete? You love milk.
How about this? I'm going to throw out another scenario to you. They're staying in the 1950s. They never get their memories back. They never remember the previous 6 seasons, but Bughead is Endgame. How do you feel about that?
Yeah!
I knew it. That's what.
That's not. That's going to be fucked up.
All right. Well, that was a depressing news section. Why don't we move on and wrap up here by talking about our MVP. That dog barking means it's time to talk about the MVP of the episode. Justin, who's your MVP?
A great question. I gotta give it up to. It's tough.
Pip?
First off, the dog.
Yeah,
why don't you go to Pete
Pip
first? Why don't you go to Pete first?
Pete, who's your MVP for the?
I gotta say, Clay. Clay and Kevin in this had a great episode. Great to see them together and in love. So yeah, that's who I'm going with.
All right. I'll take the flip side of that relationship and give a shout out to Kevin this episode, like we talked about. It was an episode that, like I talked about a couple of episodes past, a lot of Kevin's storylines are rooted in gay trauma, and certainly this gets at that in terms of him being worried that not coming out, but being happy in a relationship is the cause of his parents' relationship disintegrating. But I do think it includes that without necessarily explicitly being about that. It is instead about his emotional state and his friends being there for them. And I thought it was really beautifully done. I was really impressed with Casey Cott's performance over the course of this episode, and I'm happy we focused on him. Justin, if them dogs have stopped barking, then that MVPs start a rockin'. Take it away.
I guess I'll give it up for Archie in this episode, going from starting off as the center of this musical, all-American boy, through actually making some bigger choices in his life and taking some swings. Feels like the kind of progression that you want in your character, and I was happy to see it.
Yeah. All right. If you'd like to support this show and all the shows we do, patreon.com/comic book club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Riverdale. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Riverdale Dark on Twitter, as long as that lasts. Riverdale After on Instagram. Riverdale After Dark on Facebook. comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, we'll see you after sweet little motorcycle rides.